witches. Welcome back to the Witch of Lupin Hollow YouTube channel. I'm Tanae Stewart, your host, and today we're talking about how to stop searching for spiritual fulfillment. Specifically, I want to talk about how to stop searching for it from outside of yourself and instead find it from within, because that's where true, real fulfillment really comes from. The first thing that you have to do is really understand what it means to be spiritually fulfilled, right? So we need to really begin to think about what it means to us, because we all can have a different definition, and that's okay. But if we don't understand what our definition is, and instead we're trying to align with the definition of somebody else who might be on a different path or at a different stage in their spiritual practice, and so we can't really align with their definition if it doesn't really feel as meaningful to us, right? So the first thing you have to do is define what it means to be spiritually fulfilled to you. For me, I think that this really means feeling supported, feeling grounded, feeling really connected to our spirituality. It means being in the moment, it means being present, and it means being okay with that. I have this little planter that I bought years ago that says on it, "Grow where you are planted." And it just has always really resonated with it. And so it's actually across from my bed. So I wake up every morning and see it, because I think that, we all need reminders to be present in that way, to make the best of what we're given, and to, come out of every situation stronger and more ourselves. So that's what being spiritually fulfilled means to me. To someone else, it might mean, having a daily spiritual practice and having that connection every single day, maintaining that. It might also mean, finding peace, or, finding your, inner peace or inner love and sharing that with other people. It might mean feeling love from others. But regardless, spiritual fulfillment doesn't come from anything outside of ourselves. So even if your idea, your sense of being spiritually fulfilled means, interacting with other people, loving others, receiving love in return, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need those other people to be spiritually fulfilled. That is still coming from within you. It's coming from your heart, your sense of love, and what that means to you and what it means to share that. You can love someone who doesn't necessarily return it, right? But you can still receive fulfillment from knowing that you expressed that love, even if it didn't come back to you. So finding your definition of fulfillment and making sure that your definition comes from you, that's the first step here. And really, that's the first step, I think, on any spiritual path, because if we're seeking, some sort of spiritual practice or path, and we're trying to create that for ourselves, but we don't really have a goal, we don't really know where we're going with it, it's perfectly okay to just explore and, find our way. But if you don't have that root at heart that's saying, this is what I'm pursuing, this is what I'm searching for, and better yet, this is what I'm creating in my life, then, it can be really easy to become distracted from your practice or to not feel as connected. And so I think having kind of an intention for your spiritual practice of the kinds of fulfillment that you want to build in your life, not that you want to come into your life, but that you want to create, that's the beginning. That's where we really start on our spiritual path. From there, the next thing is to start trusting your intuition. And, this goes for pretty much any step on your spiritual path. You have to be able to trust yourself. You have to be able to trust that the feelings you're having, the, intuitive downloads you're receiving is true to you, and that you need to trust it and you need to follow it, and that it's guiding you in the right direction. Because sometimes our intuition comes up with all sorts of ideas that are scary to us. They're scary to our ego. They're scary to the part of us that wants to protect us from loss, from pain. Sometimes, our intuition tells us that we need to leave a certain place, or we need to have certain relationships no longer be part of our life. Sometimes our intuition tells us to, do crazy things like leave a job, or, move away from a stable situation. And that can be really scary. And so our ego steps in and says, no, 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 we don't need to do that. We're comfortable where we are. We're safe where we are. We don't want to experience, a lack of funds. We don't want to experience a lack of, support from the people in our life, even if they're not actually being supportive. And so you have to be able to trust your intuition. And I think that it's also important to be able to trust your intuition that your spiritual path is right for you. Especially for those of us on this kind of alternative spiritual path, expressing our spirituality in alternative ways, from the kind of five mainstream religions of the world. It can be scary to do that, and it can be scary to be open about it. And you don't have to be open about it, right? You can keep your spirituality completely private. But with that said, right, you have this sort of obligation to yourself to be true to who you are and to be true to what your beliefs are, whether that's religious or simply spiritual, or if you're on a witchy path. Regardless of what your path is, you have to find ways to be true to it in all areas of your life, even if you're not talking about it, even if no one else knows that this is your path. I think that that's a really important part of finding spiritual fulfillment and creating fulfillment is, feeling really secure in your path and knowing that you're doing the right thing for you. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And yes, of course, some people are going to not feel comfortable sharing your practice, right? You might be one of those people. You might not feel that it will be safe for you to share your practice. Maybe you live in an area where this kind of spirituality isn't accepted. Take a certain amount of courage to be able to step out of that and to say, my surroundings don't necessarily accept me, but to find people who do, to find support in places where you can, and to be able to share your practice. But I don't think that sharing your practice is the be-all, end-all of finding fulfillment, because at the end of the day, it has to come from within you. So, trying to search for acceptance from someone else can be fulfilling in that, you find support, you find guidance, but at the end of the day, that fulfillment needs to come from inside of you. If you're searching for fulfillment by sharing your practice and trying to get people to accept you, that's searching for fulfillment from outside of yourself. But if you are creating fulfillment in your life by stating who you are and, being willing to be open about that, even if you're not really saying you're a witch, or you're not really saying that this is your path, but you're starting to talk about your beliefs, or you're starting to state that, I like to spend time in nature. Maybe it's as simple as that, right? You don't necessarily have to share your practice in order to, step into your confidence and start sharing your practice in a way. It's sort of finding that balance for within yourself, right? It's finding where you're comfortable, pushing your boundaries a little bit, because our comfort zone is sort of our ego talking, right? It's saying, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is where I feel safest. But to me, spiritual fulfillment, spiritual enlightenment are not about our comfort zone. They're about stepping out of that comfort zone and being willing to be who we really are. So you have to find the balance of where you are actually safe. Sometimes our ego speaks up because we really aren't going to be safe in a particular situation. In the 21st century, most of the world, understands that there are many different paths. Almost every single person I've ever talked to who, came out of the so-called broom closet did not regret it and found that they were much more accepted, or at least that people were very apathetic and didn't really care, much more so than they anticipated. And that's the experience I had as well. Part of this is learning to trust your intuition, that you're on the right path, and being willing to step out of that comfort zone, trusting your intuition over the voice in your head that tells you, this might not be the right path, this might not be right for us, or, this might not, keep us in a safe, comfortable place. Being willing to push those boundaries if that's what your intuition is telling you to do. The next piece of this is really starting to understand your spiritual needs. Really starting to feel into, what does it mean to you to have a spiritual practice, and why is that something you want? This kind of goes back to setting an intention for your spiritual path, but I think it's a little bit more specific than that. You can look at your astrology, you can look at your heritage or cultural ancestry to inspire you and to bring your spiritual practice out of sort of the books and blogs that you read and that you find, and that can be really inspiring, but that at the end of the day are still someone else's practice. Even my videos, even my blogs, even everything I share, I can still only speak from my perspective, right? And so regardless of the people that you feel connected to online or in books, it's important to understand that they are on their own path and you can find inspiration from them, but that at the end of the day, you are responsible for creating your path. And so starting to understand the needs that are really specific to you is really important. This is sort of the crux of what does it mean to have a spiritual path? What does it mean to practice? What does it mean to be a witch? And what does that mean to you? And why is that something you want in your life? You have to understand why you're on this path, why you're walking this journey. You don't have to know all of the whys, right? Our spiritual path is a journey. It's a mystery, and it's a mystery without a destination. At the end of the day, all of us are looking for some kind of fulfillment out of our spirituality. There's a reason that we practice our spirituality. And there's a reason we want to express it in our lives. And really, that's because we're looking for some kind of fulfillment out of it. If you can take a step back from your spiritual practice and ask yourself, A, what are my spiritual needs? What do I need to get out of my practice to feel fulfilled? And B, is the practice that I currently have doing that? Is your practice serving your needs? Or, are you just sort of, either copying or regurgitating, very likely without even realizing it, what someone else has done? And that's fine. Certainly there's overlap. Lots of people like to practice together in a coven or a church, right? And so we can all have overlapping practices. Your path doesn't have to be completely and entirely unique to you, but it does need to serve you in a particularly unique way. And so, you need to think very critically about your practice and about why you're doing the things you're doing so that you can adapt them if they're not really serving your needs. So, really the big picture here is you have to learn to trust yourself, and you have to create a practice that is really serving you, that's really in alignment with your own needs. Your spiritual practice is not a cookie cutter experience. Your spiritual path is something that you create from within yourself. You create it from your heart. You create it from your intuition and your mind. You ask your body what your body needs. If you're not asking these questions, then it's very likely that your spiritual practice isn't very fulfilling for you because it doesn't feel like it's really connecting with all parts of yourself. And if you're feeling like that, then I really encourage you to do this critical thinking exercise. Stop and ask yourself, why isn't this working for me? What do I need to be getting out of this that I'm not getting out of it? I think that's the most important question we can ask ourselves on our spiritual path is, what do I need and how do I make sure that I get what I need? To wrap it all up here, spiritual fulfillment obviously is a big topic, and it's something that's really unique to each and every one of us. What we need, what we want, how we're going to get it. But really, it's just about asking yourself questions. It's about thinking about your path. It's about setting intentions. And then it's about reevaluating those intentions over time and allowing yourself to evolve and adapt and grow. We change, and if our spiritual practice doesn't change with us, then even if it served our needs at one point, it's going to stop serving our needs as we evolve. Stop searching for spiritual fulfillment from outside of yourself. Start looking within. Start asking the hard, deep questions of yourself and start answering them so that you can really create a spiritual path that is really, truly, and uniquely fulfilling for you. So drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about all of this and what your spiritual needs are, how I can support you in them. And make sure that you like this video and that you follow the channel so that you can be notified whenever I put out a new video. All right, see you next week.